Welcome to Star Watch Now, your front row seat to all the hottest gossip, drama, and breaking news from the world of entertainment. If it's trending, shocking, or star-studded, we're covering it. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. 5 mainstream outlets, 1 documentary, and a wave of pre-release numbers so bold they've turned curiosity into a countdown. Today, we unpack how Wang Yibo's Exploring New Horizons 2 became a hit before it even aired, why it matters, what it could change, and how you can be part of the journey. What makes this moment feel like a signal rather than noise is the unusual alignment of credibility, curiosity, and craft. When 5 mainstream outlets converge on the same story, they do more than amplify headlines. They validate attention and frame expectations. The promise is not of a celebrity merely visiting the wilderness, but of an artist stepping beyond studio grammar into a place where weather edits the script and patience becomes the lead instrument. Audiences can sense that shift. The images we have glimpsed, grain in the air, breath catching at altitude, the respectful distance between camera and landscape, suggest a production willing to surrender control in order to earn truth. That matters. It answers a long-standing fatigue with glossy adventure and empty peril by proposing a different contract. We will show effort without bravado, risk without recklessness, and discovery without entitlement. In that contract, Wang Yibo's star power is not the subject but the lens. It draws a broad public to themes that usually sit at the margins: route finding, safety choices, the ethics of entering fragile spaces. The pre-release surge, then, reads not as hype but as appetite for a more responsible form of spectacle, one in which skill is narrated, failure is legible, and success is provisional rather than triumphant. If the series sustains this tone, letting natural sound breathe, trusting longer shots, giving credit to guides and rangers, it can turn weekly viewing into a quiet civic ritual. People will not only ask what happens next, but how was that decision made, who looked after this valley, and what might I do differently when I go outside? That is the difference between attention and attentiveness, between a trending moment and a cultural signal strong enough to carry beyond its own broadcast window. It is breaking through now because 3 currents are quietly aligning: credibility, form, and rhythm. Credibility arrives first, not as a blare of superlatives but as a set of trust signals, the convergence of established outlets, the early audience response, and the sense that the production understands the difference between showing off and showing how. Form follows. Instead of reheating survival theatrics, the series treats skill as a narrative in its own right. We are invited to notice judgment under pressure, the choreography of safety, the humility of turning back, and the ethics of moving through fragile places. Star power does not eclipse this. It reframes it, widening the circle of people who will sit still for a lesson in rope work, cold management, or route choice because they care about the person learning. Rhythm seals it. A weekend double-release schedule transforms viewing from a one-off spike into a habit. Anticipation stretches across the week, discussion fills the gap, and each new episode lands into a community already warmed up. None of this relies on spectacle alone. It relies on tone. Camera placements that respect distance, edits that let breath and weather speak, acknowledgments of the guides and rangers who hold the invisible line between adventure and irresponsibility. That tone is disarming in an era suspicious of polish. It suggests the program will earn every moment it asks us to believe. The result is a different kind of momentum. People are not only sharing clips, they are sharing questions: what would I have done there? What did they check before committing? What duty do we owe the valley after we leave? When a show prompts that sort of talk, the algorithms follow not because they are gamed, but because a conversation worth having has begun. What would feel genuinely new is not a louder trailer but a wider circle of participation, where the program opens its process instead of simply displaying its polish. Imagine each episode paired with a living route note, terrain, access rules, seasonal closures, so viewers learn that wild places are navigated with consent, not conquered. Replace the usual bravado reel with a short decision diary that explains why a move was attempted or abandoned, showing that turning back can be a mark of judgment rather than failure. Let the craft step into view. A 90-second edit room glimpse where a producer unpacks one choice, why natural sound carried a beat, why a shot lingers, to teach media literacy alongside mountain literacy. Fold in local voices not as color but as counsel. A ranger on migratory timings, a guide on cultural etiquette, a rescuer on what strains their teams after tourists leave. Offer a skill ledger that travels with the series, rope systems, cold management, cave etiquette, each paired with safety standards and pathways to certified instruction. So inspiration runs parallel to responsibility. Add a weather window explainer to demystify risk planning, and a repair log that normalizes maintenance of kit over the fetish of new gear. Create a quiet accountability thread. An end card that discloses permits obtained, donations made to local conservation, and any carbon mitigation steps, inviting viewers to match or adapt those actions at home. For community energy, curate a weekly photo prompt judged on care and composition rather than peril, and a micro Q&A where a field expert answers the 3 best viewer questions in plain language. Finally, keep a mistake ledger. Small, honest notes about what the team would do differently next time. None of this spoils the magic. It deepens trust. The adventure remains intact, but the audience is treated as partners in understanding, not passive consumers of risk. What gives the series its emotional core is not the spectacle of cliffs or the statistics of cold, but the quiet grammar of effort. The shiver before a move, the count of breaths, the small nod that says, again. We do not stay because the camera goes higher. We stay because the person on screen grows steadier. There is dignity in the way a hand hesitates and then commits, in the soft apology to a teammate after a misjudged step, in the decision to retreat when the mountain's answer is clearly no. That honesty invites us in. It turns the familiar arc of triumph into something gentler and truer. Curiosity, doubt, rehearsal, adjustment, and a success that feels earned rather than staged. The star's presence becomes a conduit rather than a destination, widening the audience for moments that would otherwise pass unnoticed. The rope check that prevents a story, the shared look that settles nerves, the brief silence when weather speaks louder than words. The music recedes and natural sound takes the lead. Fabric rasping, snow compressing, air thinning. In that soundscape, we remember that courage is often quiet, and leadership is frequently logistical. Packing right, pacing well, thanking the local guide who reads the valley like a book. The series is at its most moving when it allows effort to be ordinary, when a failure is not edited out but folded into learning, when gratitude is given as easily as praise is received. It is here that the conservation thread binds to the human one. Respect for place becomes respect for limits, and respect for limits becomes care for one another. If the program keeps faith with this tone, unhurried, attentive, humane, then each episode will leave more than an impression. It will leave a residue of steadiness, the sense that the right kind of adventure makes us quieter, kinder, and more prepared to meet the next hard thing. What this series offers, beyond the immediate thrill of spectacle, is a gentle reordering of values. It proposes that attention is not simply something to be harvested but something to be educated, and that the most meaningful outcomes of a program like this occur off-screen. In the choices people make when they step outside at the weekend, in the respect they extend to guides and rangers, in the humility with which they approach a trail, a shoreline, or a cave. By narrating judgment as clearly as it narrates jeopardy, the show normalizes safety as a virtue rather than a concession, and models the calm, procedural courage that prevents drama from becoming disaster. It adds cultural weight to conservation by tying wonder to responsibility, reminding viewers that wild places are not a backdrop but a commons, lived in, managed, and vulnerable. It also dignifies invisible labor, the local expert who reads weather, the fixer who secures permits, the medic who draws a boundary and says, "Not today." In doing so, it raises the standard for documentary craft, asking editors to trust silence, producers to credit sources, and audiences to reward patience. The wider effects are subtle but real. Responsible tourism gains ground, outdoor participation becomes a little safer. Young viewers inherit role models who treat skill as stewardship rather than swagger. Even in cities, the mindset travels. Measured preparation, kindness under pressure, an instinct to leave places better than we found them. At a time when algorithms incentivize outrage, this is counter-programming with moral ballast. It tells us that fascination need not be frenetic, and that the highest form of entertainment is the kind that equips us for the world we share. If that ethic sticks, the series will have done more than trend. It will have taught a way of paying attention. Hype is useful, but it is not the same thing as proof. Early signups, trending tags, and glowing headlines tell us that curiosity exists. They do not yet guarantee that the work will meet the standard its audience hopes for. A gentle reality check begins by honoring that difference. Trailers compress difficulty into poetry. Fieldwork stretches poetry back into process, with weather, logistics, and safety sitting in the foreground. Some claims circulating now blend press copy with social chatter. Treat them as indicators, not verdicts, and reserve judgment for what appears on screen. If the series is serious about responsibility, it will show its workings. Permits and access agreements, qualified supervision, the right to turn back. It will credit local expertise and let natural sound breathe, trusting that patience reads as confidence rather than padding. It will also admit limits, days lost to wind, lines not attempted, shots not taken because conditions were wrong. That candor protects both people and places, and it protects the audience from the hollow aftertaste of overpromise. There is room, too, for disappointment. A famous face cannot carry thin storytelling, and spectacle cannot disguise careless editing. If an episode falls short, the honest course is to learn in public and do better next week. The healthiest stance for viewers is active kindness. Curious, skeptical enough to ask, how was this decision made? Generous enough to recognize craft and invisible labor when you see it. Measured in that light, success becomes more than a spike on a dashboard. It becomes a pattern of good choices sustained over time. When the noise subsides, what should remain is a program that earns trust scene by scene, and a community willing to weigh excitement against care, because that is how admiration matures into respect. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more skill cards, route maps, and mini interviews from the field, do hit subscribe, like, and ring the bell. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the next one. If you want, I can also provide a 30-word description, SEO tags, and a thumbnail text trio tailored to the script.